you will be blown away with the production, the dancing, the singing, the set design, the lighting design, everything that we're working on right now. It's just, we've really stepped it up this year to provide Klamath with something that I think that they're really going to enjoy.
Welcome to Shaping the Basin. I'm here today with Curtis Peoples, the director of the Ross Ragland Theater. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
You're fairly new in that role, correct?
Yeah, since November of 2023.
Oh, okay. So tell me about your background before the theater.
Well, I retired and came to Klamath Falls, Oregon from Texas. I was in Lubbock, Texas, and at Texas Tech University for 25 years. And I started a music archive there and ran that for 20 years. I got paid to collect music. And it's something that I started from one collection of master studio tape recordings from a recording studio I worked in. And then it just progressed, and I wound up building a recording studio at the university, which was a creative process studio that was free for all of our students, faculty, and employees that worked there. So it didn't matter whatever your major was. If you were a professor or a groundskeeper, you could come use our studio for free and record albums, do podcasts. We had people do spiritual help type tapes, things like that. It could be anything that just to get an experience in the recording studio. And so I did that. I started at the Vietnam archive, though. All of my undergraduate work was in Vietnamese studies on the Vietnam War, and I did my master's thesis on that. And then I would switch to American West. And when I started the music archive, and then I got a PhD in history, focusing on the music of Lubbock, Texas. And so I've done a lot of music, played in a lot of bands. Music's really been my whole life in the entertainment industry. So I came up here to play music in the Pacific Northwest and to retire and teach a little bit at Oregon Tech. I teach in humanities over there and in the history department, teach U.S. history, and I teach American media studies and a Pacific Northwest rock and roll history course that covers 1954 through 1994, basically Louie Louie to Nirvana Smells Like Teen Spirit. So, and I'm developing some new courses for them as well as for KCC and an introduction to audio for recording.
So you still work at Oregon Tech
I do.
Okay, and sometimes at KCC. I didn't realize that.
Well, I'm developing the new course at KCC.
Okay.
We hope to start that in the winter of 2026. So that students in the digital media program can get acclimated to what it's, you got to have good audio for your video. Video could look great, but if you can't really hear, it doesn't sound good, then people get turned off really quick. So we want to train them in good audio practices, at least an introduction to that. And so, yeah, I moved up here to play music and teach a little bit, and because there's a lot of great folk festivals and blues festivals and things all throughout the West Coast and Pacific Northwest. And I did that. I was playing in some bands and playing around town a little bit for 6 months. And then I got a call if I could come over and be interim executive director at the Ross Ragland Theater. And initially I was just a consultant and then quickly transitioned over into the interim position, which became full-time executive director position this last season.
Okay. Well, congratulations on that
Thank you.
position. The Ross Ragland has been, when did it open?
Well, the Ross Ragland Theater, of course, started as the Esquire Theater back in 1940. It opened November 30th, 1940 with Gary Cooper's The Westerner. It was a movie house. And there's a great documentary out there that Paul Harris directed and produced with Jesse Widener on the history of theaters. And I'm going to be showing that tomorrow, actually, at the Theater for a Leadership group here in town. And so there were so many theaters in this town. It was just amazing how many theaters were in Klamath throughout the history of the city. And the Ragland then became what became the Ragland was the Esquire Theater, which closed down in 1980. And it was destined to be torn down like the Tower Theater. And a group of people, Women's Auxiliary Group, got together and decided to save it. And there was a big community effort to raise the money. It took several years and then officially opened as the Ross Ragland Theater in 1989 with The Music Man as the first musical.
Okay. So you said the first movie as the Esquire. Do you know what the last movie before it closed in 80 was?
I don't, but I bet I can find out.
That would be interesting to me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
By that time, they were doing some, like a lot of B movies. It was not really doing well. So they were just sort of, second run movies, B movies, things like that, not like
Gotcha.
premiere type stuff. Because by then, Pelican had opened up their theaters. And so people were looking for a more, I guess, modern experience or something.
Mhm.
And, but they had to save the building, because it's an iconic building in this town with the tower and everything up there and the lights. And so it was a good thing they did, and it was the very first cultural center really in Southern Oregon, in Northern California, that was really focusing on theater and cultural arts. And of course, now we have a lot more revamped theaters throughout the West as well as throughout the nation.
What is there? I know it's been a fairly short time that you've been at the Raglan, but is there something you're really proud of already accomplishing?
Yeah, so I was able to write a grant. There's a lot of grant writing when it comes to nonprofits, right? A lot of grant writing has to happen, and there was one that was coming up through the Higher Education Coordinating Committee last summer, and it was due in a couple of weeks. And my wife was working on one for Oregon Tech, where she teaches full time, and she told me about this, and so I wrote this grant for $1.2 million to start an internship program in continuing technical education. I started out in technical education in high school doing welding and metal trades, and I did that for many years. And then I went to South Plains College and got a degree in sound technology, which was a technical education. So I thought, well, not everybody wants to be a welder like I did or work in sheet metal shops and stuff. And so, what about continuing technical education in theater arts, where you're learning audio, lighting, setting up for shows, building sets? So, like right now, we got Anastasia, we got all of our interns working on that. So, I wrote the grant, and they funded 40% of it, which pays some basically parts of salaries to help teach the students, the interns, and to pay all of their wages for to come and work and get paid to do this. Because a lot of times internship programs are for free, but we want to make sure that everybody got paid, so they get paid to come and learn.
Okay. I think probably a lot of people think of theater and only think of the people that are on stage
Right.
during it. So, talk to me about the other ways people can be involved in a theater production that is not on stage.
Well, there is a lot of the behind the scenes because you have the lighting that has to happen. You have the sound, the PA that has to happen. You have to get that. If it doesn't sound good and look good, are people going to want to come back to see those performances? Most not, because you're selling an experience. You want it to sound good, look good. There's set design. With the Ross Ragland Theater, other opportunities are with our guild, which is a volunteer organization that has been with the Ragland Theater since the beginning. And they really are a driving force to help keep the place open because they volunteer their time for helping to set up, run concessions, working as ushers, cleaning after the shows, handing out programs, taking tickets at the door. So the Guild has been instrumental to the survival of the Ross Ragland Theater.
Hmm. Every director of every organization puts their own mark on it, if you will. So, what do you think your mark on the Ragland is? Are there things that you're changing or a vision that you have for it?
My vision is to upgrade technologies. A lot of the technologies we've been using are older. Like, for instance, the audio system dates back to probably the 90s. And by upgrading the audio system, and we're working on grants and trying to secure that funding, is to hang the speaker system from the ceiling and get it off the stage because that will help with accessibility. One of my things is safety and accessibility in the theater, transforming it that way. Oregon and Klamath County are big leaders in accessibility tourism right now. And so we're now Will the World verified destination in Klamath County in Ross Ragland Theater, like many other places, are now part of that Will the World experience. So if somebody's looking to come, maybe they're in a wheelchair, they're visually impaired, or whatever it is, whatever their accessibility needs are, we're trying to make it a better place for people to come and have a better experience. And if we can hang that PA system and get the money for that, then that's going to open up more ADA seating for us. We got a generous grant from the county to integrate a new audio system for hearing impaired that we're working on getting that all integrated right now. So it takes time to do all of that. Of course, it does take money. We still have to get the money for the PA system. And then our lighting is something else I'd like to upgrade to more modern LED lighting because it's going to save us energy. It's going to take fewer lights. The lighting systems we use date back to the 1950s, 60s, 70s, that type of technology. And it's great and it does its job, but it's hot. It burns a lot of energy. So it's a way for us to save energy and use fewer lights and they move and do interesting things. So it creates a better experience, a more modern experience for our patrons.
Hmm. What do you think from the executive director, from your position?
Mhm.
What's the biggest challenge facing the theater right now?
The biggest challenge with any theater that's across this nation and maybe across the globe is especially since the pandemic, it's been the development of the streaming apps, things like that. People get really comfortable watching their chosen streaming app, or maybe they own 5 or 10 of them. Who knows? You're bouncing around from them. So it's getting them out of their houses where, there's all of this entertainment right at your fingertips on your phone or on your television or computer. So it's getting them out back into live entertainment and engaging either music, a community production like the Anastasia musical that we've got coming up. And there's just a variety of various programs that we do. So it's not always music or always theater. It could be all kinds of things.
Mhm.
So one of my challenges is, of course, diversifying revenue streams to meet the reduction in grants and donations that are happening. There was an article that just came out like yesterday about Oregon and how a lot of that money is drying up. So how do we find those new revenue streams? And something I've been looking at is attracting people to Klamath for meetings and conferences throughout the region. So, we don't have an airport that people can fly into. So how can we attract regional meetings here? And hey, bring a kayak or a bicycle and make it a vacation conference
Mhm.
kind of stay. So that's one of my goals that I'm working on, is to help attract tourism to Klamath County and to Klamath Falls, and have a really nice event center, because when people come in there, go, wow, this is really great. So we got the big theater that we can use for a big meeting space, and then we also have the cultural center that was built in the early or mid 90s that can be breakout rooms, and we've done that with Casita to have meetings there. The county did a trauma conference there where we had breakout rooms and used the main theater. And then Pacific Crest just had their first annual business conference expo there. And that was a success, having people come into the theater and then the 2 breakout rooms. And we have all this great technology in place right here, ready to go. So we want to attract more conferences and meetings to Klamath and get people here and excited about the city and the county.
Mhm. I love that you talked about the challenges, but also the opportunities that
Sure.
exist there, because I think there's a lot. You were talking about part of the challenge is getting people to leave their homes.
Mhm.
So, for somebody that's never been to a theater, can you describe the difference between sitting on your couch and convince me to leave my couch and come to the theater?
Well, I'm sure everybody's gone to a concert before, could be an
I would
outdoor
hope so.
concert, a festival, or something like that. And we have little mini festivals where we'll block off the street and things. It's about engaging with your community and your friends. It's getting out and being part of the community. I think is the most important thing, is getting out and engaging with other people, because through community communication and interaction, then we just have a stronger, more cohesive community. And so some people hear theater and they think, oh, there's just going to be a play or something going on. No, there's music and there's other events. Like I said, there could be meetings, and it's just coming out and engaging. And I'll get calls sometimes. Well, do I need to get dressed up to come to the concert because it's theater? No, we're still an event center too.
Mhm.
It says Ross Ragland Theater in there, and we have a lot of cultural entertainment, but we have a lot of folk entertainment and popular entertainment too. So I'm working on a big country show that's going to be coming in October that I'm getting ready to release. One of the first things I did when I became executive director was book Pam Tillis. That was the first thing I did, was book Pam Tillis, and we sold it out, and it was great.
Mhm.
And so I've got another show of that caliber from the 90s, who's celebrating her Ruby tour right now, and we're going to have a big announcement on that country concert coming up soon.
Now I want to Google and see who's on a Ruby tour.
Yeah.
That's fun.
So it'll be your 40th anniversary tour.
Very fun. Um, what does I think, sometimes out in the community, I hear people complain because they don't like that kind of music or they don't
Hmm.
like that kind of thing. But I don't think a lot of people understand what it's like to try to bring an act here. Talk to me about how you do that.
Well, I get tons of emails in my inbox about just all kinds of a wide variety of genres. It could be classical music, it could be jazz, performance-based dance. Of course, a lot of ballets come here. Not only do we present the shows, but we also rent the theater. So coming up in 25, 26, some of the shows that we'll be presenting will be like this country show. There will be a blues show that we're real excited about, a harmonica blowout. We've had demand for this particular artist to come back, so we're doing that. But some of the rentals will be like the Creedence Clearwater Revival. There's a Linda Ronstadt tribute. And of course, we've got Swan Lake and the Nutcracker and the ballets. So you've got that classic rock happen. You've got traditional theater like with ballet. We haven't been doing as much classical music, but we do have some local stuff that we continue to do, like the symphony, and we have our community band. So you'll see some more traditional stuff as well as the chorale always does well every year, especially the Christmas concert will always be sold out.
Hmm. What? Why do you think theater is important to a community?
It's a place to gather and to see your friends and to have a good time, and it's a place to escape a little bit. We those apps and things we're talking about, well, we're also bombarded with a lot of information, through social media and through so many news outlets. And sometimes it's nice just to get away from all of that. If you can put your phone, leave it at home, or put it in your pocket and just come enjoy some entertainment. Some of the challenges of the entertainment that you were talking about, as we know, is as fuel prices have increased, as streaming has increased for especially for musicians, it's really dried up their revenue streams to sell albums and things like it was in the 70s. I remember going to concerts for like $6 and you go see big name acts many years ago. And so these days the prices have really increased. So that's a big challenge, is to keep an affordable ticket price for quality entertainment. As I took my daughter to a concert, it's $400 a ticket,
Hmm.
and in a big city. So we're not doing that here. We can't do that.
Right.
And so it's trying to keep it reasonable, and still providing quality entertainment.
Hmm. And you guys do, I know you talked about the internship program.
Mhm.
Congratulations on that grant, by the way. But you do other education programs.
Sure.
Tell me about those.
We have after school programs that have been going on for a long time. There's various arts that will happen, from either watercolor and drawing to theater. The summer camps are coming up. Every summer there's summer camps. And so they'll come together. We got our little sprouts, which will be the younger children, and that'll happen in the cultural center, where they're learning their early beginning acting and learning lines and getting on stage and doing something very simple, a little play. And then we'll get into like teens, and then we have a more robust camp there, and that will be or presented from the main stage. So right after the community musical, we'll flip and get ready to start building sets for the teen camp that's going to be happening this year, which is Dr. Lou Little Jr. And then teen theater also will happen in January. So it happens throughout the year. We also have a youth starts program where we send artists and residents through us out into county schools to go teach arts. As we know, throughout the years, arts have been defunded a lot, or just cut in budgets. Maybe not defunded is the right word, but budgets have been strained. And so there's not a lot of money for arts programs where we need reading and writing and the STEMs, the science and stuff. So a lot of times band and art and things like that will get cut. So we send teachers out into the schools to do that. And so it's now more than ever that we need those grants and those donations and that funding, so we can continue to be that surrogate to help the schools to provide arts education for our
Mhm.
youngsters out there.
I love that. I've heard studies over the years about how important sports are for kids and the
Sure.
things that they learn. But what does being involved in theater teach kids?
Um, Arts and theater are really an emotional pill. It's about the heart sometimes, and it's about belonging. Sports are about belonging too. So you get that team sports. Arts is a lot of team building as well because you're working with other cast members. You're working with the technical crew. It takes a lot of people to come together to put on a performance or an event or a show. And so you're learning those team buildings. You're learning about belonging. Not everybody's cut out for sports, for running or something like that, but you might find your place. It makes you more comfortable being in public and getting in front of the public, and it could be public speaking and learning to engage with your peers and making new friends.
If a picture says 1,000 words, imagine the story. 24 frames a second. Can tell about your business. 40 Deuce Films.
Have you ever considered doing a workshop that would help adults use some theater skills to be better communicators? Is that a thing?
It is a thing.
I feel like there could be a really cool workshop like that.
I think just finding the right instructor that could do that. I've heard about those types of workshops, and that's definitely something we could look into and develop. Um, there is the way you present. Of course, you're acting. Sometimes you're taking on a character. Sometimes, as we know, in public speaking or in various environments, you have to take on certain roles or characters, be it from, are you playing the CEO, or are you a finance person? What is your role in an organization sometimes, and knowing how to play that role, I think could be very beneficial, actually.
It sounds, yeah, I'm just thinking
And
about
becoming more
things.
comfortable in front of a microphone or
Yes.
in front of people.
Yes. And even exploring. I think sometimes as adults, it feels like we lose our playfulness or our curiosity. And so, even who knows, there could be people out there that never considered they might enjoy being involved in music or theater or anything. And I wonder if it'd be an avenue for people to find that.
I think it could be. I mean, definitely something to explore. We're always testing new adult education classes. Like there's watercolor classes coming up next week. So if you've been interested in something like that, there's been dance classes.
Mm-hmm.
So I think sometimes a lot of our desires that we're like afraid to do, when you're young, you'll just get up and dance like there's nobody around.
Mm-hmm.
But as you get older and a little more serious and self-conscious, then sometimes it's a little harder. Not for everybody, but it's nice to have those opportunities to say, well, maybe I've always been interested in that, and I'll at least go check it out and give it a try. Just give it a try. And if it doesn't work out, then you go into the next thing.
Yeah. You mentioned that you are a musician.
Mm-hmm.
Do you sing? Do you play? What's your...
I play guitar mainly. And so I was still working on when I was recording a new blues folk album before I got up here, and I'm getting ready to finish that up. I just flew back to Lubbock a few weeks ago to do some mixing down there in the studio. And so I'm getting ready to release that. I've been working with Dana Worth on her new album, Nevada, which comes out on June 27th. So I was playing guitar and recording engineer and helping her record and co-produce that. And so I'm real excited about working with Dana. And so it's nice to play with other musicians. I go out and do a lot of solo stuff, which is, I've got some jazz stuff, some rock, some folk, some classic rock. I write a lot of original music, and it's just all kinds of genre blending type music. And the latest album is more of a folk, like I said, folk blues, and everything's at peoplescollective.com. My first two albums, first one's kind of a rock album. We called it sort of this West Texas Pink Floyd thing. I don't know. It's got steel guitar and all of this. And then the second one was a concept album about a woman who started a girls' school in India in the early 20th century. And it's a blend of Irish music and Indian music that's mainly instrumental. Mm-hmm. It was a conceptual album. And then I worked with a dance team, and we choreographed the whole thing and performed that down in Lubbock. And so that was a lot of fun. And now I've changed gears completely and doing the blues rock thing. And then I also have a heavy metal band in Denver that I play in sometimes.
Really?
Yes.
Tell me about that. I'm having fun with this. I'm picturing you in heavy metal. Tell me.
That all started in the early 90s when I was a lot younger. And I had a friend that was a DJ there, and he's still a DJ there. And I called him up one day, and I was working in a metal factory building all kinds of stuff, out of metal. And that job wasn't working out. And I said, listen, let's start a band. You're a DJ and you're popular, and we should just make you the lead singer and get out there and see what happens. He said, all right, I'll call you right back. And he called. He goes, all right, I know this guy named Fast Eddie Lopez, and he's a guitar player. And so I just loaded up my stuff and moved to Denver like the next day. And we started this band and booked a gig for 6 weeks later on Halloween night. And it was, we wrote, I think, 8 songs in that 6 weeks, put the band together. And I'm going down October 31st of this year to Denver. And we're going to play our last show. We're going to retire the band.
Oh, what's the name of the band?
It's called Nasty's Nightmare.
Okay.
His name was Uncle Nasty on the radio. That was his
That's
moniker.
fun.
And so we had people calling in and trying to name the band kind of thing. Well, we tried to get people involved, and that's what came up with. And it was a lot of fun. It's just fun.
Yeah.
It was just fun to do. And so I like to play I listen to all kinds of music. There's nothing I don't listen to. And I can listen to everything. And when people will tell me, all that music sounds the same, I'll say, well, what do you listen to? And they'll tell me, well, all that music sounds the same, doesn't it? It just depends on what the style is and what you're doing. So every genre has great music and great musicians in it.
Can you tell me, I know this might be a little hard because if you like all kinds of music, but can you tell me a couple of pieces that are your favorite? Do you have a couple favorite songs that just stand out?
A couple of favorite songs that stand out for me. Oh my gosh, that is so hard. I'm trying to think what I've been listening to lately. Lately I've just been listening to a lot of Dana Worth music because that's what I've been doing. And she writes great songs. She's just a great vocalist and songwriter. I like to listen to classic rock stations. Sometimes just those old, like an AC/DC song or something will come on. You'll turn it up a little bit, or an old Judas Priest song from 1982 and Living After Midnight or something. But most of my stuff would be like Jeff Beck music, guitar inspired music from his Wired album. This song called Lead Boots is always a favorite one of mine. Sort of a jazz fusion kind of stuff. And gosh, I listen to old blues like Robert Johnson, Crossroads type blues music. Mississippi John Hurt acoustic Delta blues music really soothes my soul.
All right. Along those same lines, is there I just started a record collection. So this is completely personal question, but what album should I make sure I have in my collection?
What do you like to listen to?
Everything.
You listen to everything?
Everything. I listen to everything.
So this might shock people, but I have the double purple vinyl album of Selena.
Okay.
It's a great double compilation, like greatest hits of Selena that I like that.
I actually think I would like that.
Yeah, because she was crossing over from her Teano career into a pop career. And so I'm really fascinated by her career, which was cut short. So that's a great one to have. Another good album I'm trying to think about from the rock and roll world. I always like the Beatles' White Album, of course, is a good one. And Revolver's another great one. And then probably from the country world, I like the Outlaw album from the mid-'70s with Willie and Waylon and Jesse Coulter and all of. That's a great album.
Yes.
I
have that one.
I would recommend Michael Martin Murphy's Geronimo's Cadillac or Cosmic Cowboy Souvenir. Those are both great. Michael's somebody that I got to know. I collected his music down in Texas, and he was one of the musicians that I got to collect. So I got really to know him. Terry Allen is an incredible artist, and he's got this album called Lubbock on Everything, which is a double album, and it was like one of the top 50 albums of the 1970s in Rolling Stones. Oh, really interesting. Boy, I could just go on and on about album. There's tons of them out there.
We're going to have to talk after this episode because I feel like we could spend a whole half an hour on this.
And then anything out of the Pacific Northwest that I teach, that Northwest rock and roll class, I have tons of Pacific Northwest music from the early rock and roll stuff. And there's the Heart and Bach Maternal Overdrive that came down from Vancouver. Steve Miller recorded up in the Seattle area. Lots of great heavy metal come out of this area. And, of course, all of the grunge music. So there's tons of really, really good stuff. Ray Charles started out of the Pacific Northwest. So anything Ray Charles would be good.
Oh, yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Thank you for the recommendations.
Yeah.
Speaking of the Pacific Northwest rock class, Can you tell me like a interesting piece of trivia that you maybe teach in that class that somebody might be
Well, that class
surprised?
is online, so we don't really meet,
Okay.
but that's another thing that's really trended,
Mm-hmm.
right, in the last few years is online education because anybody from across the nation or the world can take classes. I didn't know that Paul Revere from Paul Revere and the Raiders owned barbershops over in Idaho when he started. He was a
Oh,
barber and started out doing hair and stuff. And of course, Paul Revere and the Raiders, I didn't know that. And still, and then I started researching this. I was like, okay, well, that's really, I don't know. Is it an interesting fact? I think it kind of
I
is,
think it's interesting.
and it's amazing some of the jobs that people have had,
Mm-hmm.
to get by. Everybody, go to LA and be a waiter while you're trying to make your break, but could be a hairstylist, you could be anything, working in metal factories. You
Yeah.
just never know what you're going to do.
We're going to get back to the Ross Ragland, but what was your first job?
My very first job when I was probably 7 years old was hoeing weeds in cotton fields in the hot summers of West Texas.
Oh, dang.
All up and down the rows, getting the weeds out. And then in third grade, I started working in the school cafeteria, washing dishes, and I got free lunch that way.
All right.
And so I've always worked, and I will do any job, and even being an executive director, if I have to bust a table with there's an event going on, or if you have to go clean a bathroom to getting up to make a curtain speech or whatever, you do whatever it takes for the organization. You have to
Yeah.
wear many hats throughout the entire organization and be prepared to do anything to make it successful.
I would agree with that. Being very creative, because it sounds like you are, has it been hard to balance the creative with the more not creative part of being an executive director?
Yeah, the the Ross Ragland Theater is a nonprofit business, which means it's still a business, right? And
Mhm.
you've got to, when we were talking about money and raising money, you've got to be able to sell tickets and get people in order to keep things moving forward. So there's the business side of it, and then there's the artistic side of it. Of course, with the artistic side, you get to work with bands and artists and ballet companies and all that. And then you got to go get into the contract and the nitty gritty details and work all of that out. And then I like the technical side of it too, because the lighting and the audio, that's really, really where I thrive. Last night, so Anastasia's coming up. This will be the 35th anniversary of the community musical at the
Mm.
Ross Ragland Theater. So 35th year. The production is fantastic. We brought Kathleen Adams on to be director, and we got Dan Crenshaw directing music and Sarah Ekstrom doing choreography. And they are just a wonderful job of the cast. And if you've seen Anastasia the musical, so this is based off of the film, the animated film from the early 90s. And so it was adapted to the stage. And when you see Anastasia the musical live, there's this train car in there and that's built. And we had some incredible local craftsmen that built this train car for us, and now we have it on the stage. We're getting ready to paint it. It is amazing,
That's
and we're getting ready to build all these big arches. And it's so that technical part of it, and just all the pieces that have to come together from the singing and the acting and lighting them right and making them sound right, and then the set design. It's going to be an amazing show, and we're doing 6 shows of it,
awesome.
2 weekends in conjunction. Second weekend with the big air show that's coming to town. We're excited about that because we got all this influx of people. So how can I get these people that are coming into town for the air show say, stay a night? If you can find a hotel room, or if you already have one, you're looking for something to do, come watch Anastasia that night or the next day. And so we've got evening performances on Friday and Saturday, and matinees Sunday at 2:00.
Nice. What is, let's say, 3 to 5 years out? What's in store for the Ragland? What do you see?
I think that the education programs will be an important part of that. I've been talking to a lot of theater people across the country, and they're all fighting the same battles of getting people into or back into the theater for entertainment. So I think the biggest challenge is going to be funding, um, especially to fund those education programs and to keep revitalizing or coming up with something new, like you were talking about earlier, like an adult education class, to become a better speaker, finding things that are not the same old, where people are like, well, I've already been there and I've already done that.
Mhm.
Continue to bring in quality entertainment that they can afford is going to be very important for Klamath, as we know. And we can't afford some of these acts. I mean, we'll say 750 seats. We can get up to 763 in there. So there's some acts we'd like to bring in, but they only play a 10,000 and above type arena. And so I remember somebody told me one time, they go, well, I saw Garth Brooks at the Ross Ragland Theater. That was a long time ago before he was really Garth Brooks, the big star. And they're like, can you bring him back? I was like, well, that cost about $1,500 a ticket. And they're like, I'd pay that. And I was like, you and maybe 4 other people.
Right.
But, so you got to find that happy balance of keeping a good ticket price, but still having somebody that can entertain you and getting people out. Marketing's always a challenge here in Klamath for any event. It doesn't matter what it is. And so we're really hitting hard right now with our Anastasia marketing. I just brought some posters. We've got tons of flyers going out. We've worked with Holiday Jewelry, who's working with us on a billboard. We've never done a billboard before. And so we're trying that. Lots of social media advertising and marketing. We're really going all in on that because I don't want anybody to go, well, I didn't hear about that.
Right.
So you just got to come pick your day and come see. You will be blown away with the production, the dancing, the singing, the set design, the lighting design, everything that we're working on right now. We've really stepped it up this year to provide Klamath with something that I think that they're really going to enjoy. And it's bringing that animated movie to life. So if you watched Anastasia animated movie, it's not exactly like that, but it's an adaptation and it's just really good. And it's your friends and your family putting this on.
Yeah. We have some talented people in this community.
Very talented.
I had Nick from Klamath Music on as a guest a while back, and I was talking about it seems like there's more and more music in our community, the arts. There's just a lot of really cool stuff, talented people here.
There is. I started out, and I still am part of the Klamath Folk Alliance and serve on the board. And when I was driving back and forth and coming back and forth between Lubbock and here, we've owned our house since late 2018. So as I was retiring, my wife was working at Oregon Tech. So there's a lot of back and forth for me. But that entire time, as soon as I got into town, the first thing I found was the Klamath Folk Alliance because it's music, right? And that's what I like to do. And I've served on that board ever since. And we're real excited about the music festival coming up this year, which I'm sure Nick talked about with the Fabulous Thunderbirds and a whole host of other people. And we'll be blocking off the street again. Most of the day we'll be out in the street, and then we'll move into the theater in the evening for the headliners.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for your time today. Yeah. 3 fun questions. I think you might know one, but if I gave you $250,000 to make a difference in the community by the end of the day, what would you do with it?
I would put a new PA system in the Ross Ragland Theater and lighting for our accessibility so we could make improvements and get more tourism to Klamath County.
I love that.
Yeah.
What do you think is one small change people could make in the community to make a difference?
I think it's summertime. Get out of your house, go out and be with the community. It could be coming to the Ross Ragland Theater. It can be going to another venue where there's live music being played. It's getting out and supporting our local businesses so that we can continue to support ourselves. As we know, we've lost through the years a lot of industry. So we've become a very service-based. And so the more that we can become really service plus attitude, I think, in this community, then we can attract more people and tourists that can come here and continue to grow and build more housing for people to come here and generate more of a tax base. Yeah.
Do you have a dream act, like somebody that if you could have anybody or anything come to the Ragland, is there something? Is there one thing?
The one person that I would like to see come to the Ross Ragland Theater. Oh gosh. I could go back to my heavy metal days and say Iron Maiden, but
that'd be cool.
That would be cool. I'm trying to think who's the one person that I'd want to see. I hear there's a new Led Zeppelin tour about getting ready to start out there, so I would love to have Robert Plant or Jimmy Page on that stage,
I wondered because I just watched Becoming Zeppelin.
Oh, it's an incredible documentary.
It was so good.
I know.
It was so good. And I had just picked up a Zeppelin record
I
the record
saw
store.
Robert Plant in Lubbock that he closed down this auditorium that was there that they tore down. You know, it was one of those places that wasn't surviving, and it got torn down. It had been there since the 50s. And he played the last show there. It was amazing.
Yeah.
And I've seen Robert Plant 3 or 4 times, and I almost had a chance to meet him, and I didn't follow up on it. And I'm just like kicking myself to this day.
Dang it. All right. Well, maybe he'll listen
Maybe.
and we can get him here. Just
So,
kidding.
Robert, you can come to the Ross Ragland Theater.
Exactly. Thank you for your time today, Curtis.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.